Hey, what's good, everybody? It's Negative1 here on DLE stream. Today, I've just been going over my thoughts on where some of the decks are going to be. By now, the new Duel Links meta tier list will probably be up, so you can compare this tier list to that one. But this is being streamed um, on the night before that it gets released. So at the moment, the Duel Links meta tier list has Water as tier 1, Blue Eyes, and Dark Lord as tier 2, and then Cyber Dragons, Fire Kings, Onomats, and Thunder Dragons as tier 3. I also included Weather Painters just as just because it's been doing well in some tournaments recently. I know it got top 4 in MCS, and then it got second place in the most recent Meta Weekly. So for those reasons, I decided to include it while in this discussion. Um, but just to start off, I do want to say that Weather Painters, unfortunately, they're not tiered. Even if they are performing well in tournaments, their main struggles, I think, will become more apparent as I put more of the other decks on. But if you look at the other decks, they generally are more powerful. They have really strong ceilings. Weather Painters, they are slow and very methodical control deck, and they can generate advantage over time. So they are good against water, for instance. Um, but especially against Blue Eyes, Cyber Dragons, and Dark Lords, it can be kind of difficult to compete when these decks have more explosive first turns. Speaking of explosive first turns, we're gonna put Blue Eyes. I think it is pretty solidly into the tier 1 category. I think Blue Eyes is definitely one of the decks that you want to be looking out for. I think it's no surprise that it's a really strong deck. Um, Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon is such a strong monster at the moment. The ability to negate grave effects and the ability to tag out into an Azure Silver Dragon are both highly valuable. Um, if you can summon a turn 1 Spirit Dragon, and then in the end phase summon, say, a vanilla Blue Eyes White Dragon, you have a favorable matchup against a lot of the other decks. You look at Cyber Dragons, and it's very difficult for them to swing over 3,000 attack or defense. Um, they do have Herald of the Abyss, but if you have a Spirit Dragon and a vanilla Blue Eyes, then they activate Herald and it will only hit the vanilla. So it's very difficult for Cyber Dragons to deal with it. Fire Kings, they will want to activate their grave effects, such as Fire King High Avatar Garunix, but Spirit Dragon can negate. Also, the Azure Eyes protects all dragons from destruction, so Garunix effect kind of gets invalidated in that way. Onomat, as some people in the chat have pointed out, does have ways to go into a Fairy Knight Ignore. It's a new super rare rank 6 XYZ from the new box. However, I think Onomat has a lot of other struggles, just like dealing with interruption, and if it doesn't see Dododo draw, they can kind of struggle. Star Seraph Dark Lords, I will get to in a little bit. And then Thunder Dragons, another deck that can summon Ignore, but generally has a harder time against Spirit Dragon. Levianeer doesn't. If you summon the Azure Eyes in draw phase, then the Levianeer can't just nuke the board. And then Water, um, if they do their Dweller and try to send an Atlantean, the Spirit Dragon can negate the Atlantean effect activating in the grave, so it's protected from that pop effect. So for those reasons, I think the turn 1 Spirit Dragon really propels Blue Eyes into tier 1. That added with Cards of Constance lets it draw a lot of cards. It lets it go into side deck cards better. It gets to just draw into Treacherous better. So for those reasons, I think Blue Eyes is definitely a tier 1 deck and a possible contender for the best deck. I wouldn't say it's definitely the best deck anymore, but I'll get into why I think that a little later. Next, I think I mentioned it a bit, but Onomat. I think Onomat is around the tier 3 range. And why I can... It's very contextual to a lot of the other matchups, so I will kind of place them while I'm talking about them. Cyber Dragons, I think Onomat can beat Cyber Dragons, but you gotta think, like, Onomat's playstyle is very, like, True Nade into OTK because it needs the True Nade to remove all interruptions. But if True Nade is not that impactful, then some of the matchups aren't as strong as you might hope. Blue Eyes doesn't really set much back row, but when it does, Treacherous is very devastate. It can be very devastating to Onomat. Cyber Dragons is always a back row deck, so True Nade is good there. That is definitely for sure. Fire Canes, however, that's a entirely hand trap deck. I know some builds have been moving towards more back row, such as the 30 card build of Fire Canes. I will talk about in a bit. But generally, Fire Canes is a really bad matchup. Starseer of Dark Lords, Bouncer is good against the Dark Lord monsters. However, the Dark Lord monsters wall out most of the Onomat XYZs, and it's very difficult to just like push through a Sanctified or two Sanctified negates. So Thunder Dragons, that is a favorable matchup for Onomat, I would say. And then Water, even if you True Nade all of the back row that Water sets, it can be difficult to OTK because of the Dweller capable of interrupting with a pop on the opponent on Onomat's turn. So for those reasons, I think Onomat is like kind of fitting in the tier 3 range. I suppose Thunder Dragons. This is a deck that if you asked me earlier this week, I would have told you that I think it's kind of like a tier 3 deck. It's very much reliant on seeing like Levianeer, seeing, those sorts of, like, the high power option. It needs to see Charge of the Light Brigade and Levianeer or Melody of the Awakening Dragon to really output a ton of pressure. However, I think there is room to be optimized with Thunder Dragons. I think just because of how the meta is shaping up, Thunder Dragons do have like a position. They can use level duplication to summon the Fairy Knight Ignoir, which is good against Blue Eyes. Levianeer is also probably the best going second monster the game has ever seen. Capable of breaking boards. It's very hard to say that Levianeer will ever get power crept, just because of how strong of a card it is. I also think that we could see the Thunder Dragons trying maybe a different skill, such as Allured by Darkness, because a lot of the monsters in the meta will deal 1800 damage or more when attacking. You think of all of the Blue Eyes monsters deal like 2500 or 3000. Fire Kings, 1800s. Star Seraph Dark Lords, the Star Seraph Scepter is 1800. All of the Dark Lord monsters are 1800. Dweller is 2200, naturally. So there are a lot of instances where the Allured by Darkness skill might be valuable. However, this is mostly speculation. I am not certain, so I won't say for sure that it's like the right way to play Thunder Dragons, but I think the deck definitely has some tier 2 potential to it. Fire Kings is one of the decks that I really like at the moment. I think has a lot of strengths. However, it does have some pretty clear weaknesses. I think Fire Kings is really good against a lot of the aggressive strategies, Thunder Dragons, Onomats, um, Cyber Dragons, these things of that nature. However, it can kind of struggle against Blue Eyes, just having the Grave negation built in. Fire Kings, I know in the most recent battle phase that happened right before the stream, Grand Finals was 20 card Fire Kings versus 30 card Fire Kings. So uh, it's is seeing some usage. I think it's a very neat deck. I think the 30 card version definitely has some consistency issues. I've talked with Grucius, which is a another player who has been trying out Fire Kings. I know he won one of the battle phases with 30 card Fire Kings, and he also feels very similarly that the 30 card version is not quite as consistent as he would like it to be. Um, but I do think Fire Kings are like tier 2 at the moment. I think as the meta progresses, Fire Kings may suffer for a few reasons. And I think it's Necro Valley really hits Fire Kings hard, and I think Blue Eyes may start running or siding Necro Valley more. I know Water always has been siding or maining Necro Valley, but Blue Eyes may get to a point where it will run it in the main deck as well. Um, DD Crow is also very strong against Fire Kings, and same with Karma Cut. So at the moment, I feel like Fire Kings is a tier 2 deck. However, if the meta moves in a direction where banishing cards is much more relevant, I know Blue Eyes at the moment, everyone is running Treacherous Trap Hole and Blue Eyes. You look at a lot of the meta, or if you look at a lot of the tournament decks, a lot of the Blue Eyes players are running Treacherous Trap Hole because it's very effective against Water XYZ. However, if Karma Cut gets used more, then Blue Eyes will have a very strong matchup against Fire Kings, which will be very harmful. So, if that happens, you might be seeing Fire Kings moving down, going down to tier 3, etc. So, just fair warning, this is a very temporary placement for Fire Kings. Don't know if it will stay there or not, but at least for now, this is where I think Fire Kings belong. Cyber Dragons, I think if you asked me earlier in the week, I would have said tier 3. But at the moment, I'm kind of feeling like Cyber Dragons might not be as good as I thought they used to be. Cyber Dragons are an OTK deck, and they can play very aggressive. But against Blue Eyes, the turn 1 Spirit Dragon just walls them off very well. All of the Blue Eyes monsters are 3000, whether they're an attack vanilla or a defense Spirit Dragon or a defense Azure Eyes. 3000 attack points is really difficult for Cyber Dragons. They're really capping out at 21 or 28. If they summon the Cyber End Dragon, it's a big commit of like a lot of resource. So that sort of thing is not easy for them to go for. And even if they can summon the Cyber End, it's not always a guarantee that they'll win, just because Cyber End is only attacking once per turn, so it's not applying a ton of pressure. The Star Seraph Dark Lord matchup, it's not very good, just because Ixchel is 2900 defense, Dark Lord Amdusk is 2800, so they can wall off Cyber Dragons. They also can search Dark Lord's Tezcatlipoca, I think I said that right, which can protect all of the as many Dark Lord monsters as possible from destruction. So if Zydra gets to their overflow, then Dark Lord can still protect from it. And then against Water, Water is definitely a favorable matchup, and this is one of the reasons why I would have said Water or Sidra is tier 3, before because I was like, okay, water is definitely a popular deck, but I think as water maybe goes down in usage, Sidra will kind of like lose its footing as like the primary water counter. And now here's where things get very controversial, I think. Um, I think water might be a tier 2 strategy. I think it's a decent tier 2 strategy, however, I think it's a tier 2 strategy. Allow me to explain why. So I know a lot of people don't really agree with this, and I know it's very um, at the moment, water is played a lot, and a lot of people will enter with water. And I know it has won tournaments. However, from my testing, I don't think water is actually tier 1. I think as people play the meta more, they will find that water is weaker than it may first appear. It kind of struggles in some of the matchups if it doesn't see Diva, and if it doesn't draw into Treacherous. For those reasons, I think Water is tier 2, and the other tier 1 deck is, in fact, Star Seraph Dark Lord. I think the Stick Chair combo in Star Seraph Dark Lord, opening Star Seraph Scepter and Star Seraph Sovereignty, is so powerful, and it generates so much advantage that it really propels the deck to tier 1. It's difficult to deal with Star Seraph Dark Lord combo if it goes first and then it will summon Ouroboros, and then hit a card out of the opponent's hand. So just playing with one less card going second can be very difficult. But beyond that, Dark Lords also have the deck out win condition, so they can stall for life points. They just gain infinitely with with Sanctified, with Contact, with Ixchel, with Amdusk, with Desire. If they want to play aggressive, they just have so many options. I think Dark Lords are definitely a deck that isn't played a lot, but as time goes on, I think you should, if you're not paying attention to Star Seraph Dark Lords, you definitely should like have this deck in your sights, because it's gonna. I think my hot take is that Star Seraph Dark Lords are potentially the best deck. I'm not sure if it's better than Blue Eyes, but there's an argument to be made for it. I think the only thing that would keep a Dark Lord from being the best deck is the side deck. So you think about what would you side against Dark Lords, and you think, oh, DD Crow, you would think Necro Valley, these cards that stop the Dark Lord infinite loop. However, DD Crow and Necro Valley, and I suppose Shadow Imprisoning Mirror is another one because it negates all the Dark Lord monster effects on the field. All of them are not very effective against the not effective against the Star Seraph combo. You know, so you think of the Star Seraph combo, it's all light monsters that use the field and it use the hand. You think about that, and it's like Necro Valley doesn't stop the Star Seraph combo. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror doesn't stop the Star Seraph combo. Neither does DD Crow. So all of these side deck cards do hit the Dark Lord engine, and I know some people have mentioned it in the chat, the card Mind Drain, which does stop the Star Seraph combo and the Dark Lord engine. However, Mind Drain is unfortunately a trap card, which means you have to go first with it. So the Star Seraph combo and Dark Lord engine both work on like different wavelengths, so that they can operate independently. So if one part of the engine gets shut off, the other part of the engine or the other part of the deck really can pick up the pace. So I definitely think Dark Lords are the deck that's going to rise, and Water is the deck that's going to fall. I know a lot of people have been playing Water in tournaments. You'll see tournament representation in water is really everywhere. Um, it's it's either most played or second most played in most tournaments. Um, the most played is typically Blue Eyes, and I think that makes sense because in my opinion, I have a very high opinion of Blue Eyes. I think it's possibly the best deck, not surely the best deck, but possibly the best deck. And Water does all right into Blue Eyes, but Water just struggles so much against Dark Lords. And if you haven't played Water against Star Seraph Dark Lords, I would encourage you to try it out. Water versus Dark Lords, it is very, it's taxing. All right. Um, and if you play Star Seraph Dark Lords against Water, it's easy. It's very easy. Um, you definitely feel like you can tell which side is advantaged if you play Water or if you play Dark Lords, in my opinion at least. So I think that's one of the primary reasons why I can't put Water into Tier 1. So I think as the meta progresses, we may see these two decks as the most prominent members in the tournaments. Water, I think, will still see play, as will Thunder Dragons, and I think Fire Kings. However, Fire Kings, as I mentioned, may move down. Not sure, but as for now, I think these are the decks you will definitely be expecting in tournaments. So that's all I got for today. Thanks for coming by. This has been Neg1. Take it easy.